Chloe, thank you. The BNP leader Nick Griffin has had his invitation to a Buckingham Palace garden party withdrawn at the last moment. Far-right politician had been invited to today's event in his capacity as an MEP, but Buckingham Palace said he'd been denied entry because he was using the invite for party political purposes. Well, this is the blog which led the palace to revoke Griffin's invitation. Posted yesterday, the BNP leader writes, "Hate-monger Griffin attends palace party." You can see the headlines now, can't you? He goes on to say, "I'll be there for the 1 million British patriots who now vote for this party, despite all the hate from the media liars, the old parties and their thuggish far-left allies." Well, I spoke to Mr Griffin in the last hour, and this was his reaction to being excluded from the palace.
When I appeared just after I was elected, with Andrew Bronze, also elected by up to 1 million voters, on College Green for a press conference, we were attacked by a far-left mob which threw darts at us. That mob was backed by, among others, David Cameron, now our Prime Minister. He still hasn't withdrawn that kind of support.
You can't just make those allegations without backing them up.
Sorry, Kate, they're not allegations, they are facts.
Back it up with your facts.
Yes, go and look on the UAF website, so-called Unite Against Fascism, and there you will see David Cameron is down as one of their sponsors. So I yet again challenge David Cameron to withdraw his support for that mob, because when we appeared on College Green a year ago, they threw darts at me and at journalists who were with us, and the police in the end did nothing about it. Now that is a real scandal, and it's a threat to our democracy.
Yeah, just to clarify, that was slightly off the facts there, but nevertheless, just to clarify, you're not suggesting for 1 second that David Cameron asked those people to throw darts or eggs or whatever at you at College Green on that occasion?
David Cameron has been supporting that group openly, and they've been boasting about his support for several years, and I've repeatedly challenged him on air to withdraw his support. He must have seen them, what they've been doing, throwing eggs and darts. Isn't it about time that he said there is no room for violence in British politics, regardless of who the victims are?
Yeah, although we do see you surrounded by quite a lot of, heavily built gentlemen who are up for a bit of trouble as and when it might be necessary.
They are not up for trouble, but if people are going to come and throw darts at me, then it's a very sensible thing to have some people who can help.
Yeah, I suppose if people are going to throw darts, the last thing you want is that sort of person at a Buckingham Palace garden party.
Well, the dart throwers are the far left, organised and mobilised and backed by the entire British political elite. So if you've got a problem with dart throwers, go and talk to them. I'm the target, not the thrower. Well,
the British political elite will probably be at the garden party. If what you're suggesting is the case, then perhaps there'll be 1 or 2 people wanting to throw eggs at you there as well. Probably best you don't go with a nice suit like that on.
Well, people might disagree with me. I disagree with a lot of what they say. They've taken this country into a war in Afghanistan that's got nothing to do with us, and every day our boys are coming home in bits. I think that's disgusting, so I disagree with them, but I still respect their right as elected politicians to go to an institution of the state, such as the garden party at Buckingham Palace.
Why do you want to go?
I wanted to go, partly because I'd love to see the gardens there, they're supposed to be fantastic, but also because 1 million people voted British National Party at the last election. That gives us a mandate to talk about issues that the other politicians shy away from. And I think it's very important on behalf of...
But not at the garden party, though, Mr Griffin. That's the point, isn't it? Yeah, but not at the garden party. You don't have those conversations at the garden party with the Queen.
I'm absolutely sure that at the garden party we'd have been talking about plants and the wildlife with the people there, because it's not necessarily the place for intensive politics. But certainly, had the Queen or had anyone asked me, what do I think, then I tell them what I think, straight and blunt like I always do.
That's why you've not been invited, though.
Perhaps so, but I think the shame there is the point in a democracy is that you're supposed to have robust debate and not shut out points of views with which you're going to have.
Not with the Queen.
Well, if the Queen asked, then the Queen can be told. But my wife, for instance, she works with a lot of nurses. A number of them have gone to the garden parties over the last few years. They all told her, because she was due to come with me, they all said, we never even saw the Queen while we were there, so I guess the same would have been true for me.
So you were just being a little bit mischievous with your website then?
Not in the least bit mischievous. It's just pointing out to people that it's an opportunity for them to say what they really want asked. And had it arisen, then the most popular question, which was whether or not the Queen would stand up for our soldiers by saying they shouldn't be in Afghanistan, that war's got nothing to do with us, they're fighting and dying on her behalf, and I think that's a legitimate question to ask a head of state when we have a government which is hell-bent on keeping our boys in a war that's got nothing to do with us for another 4 or 5 years at least.
Mr Griffin, we both know that you were just being a little bit mischievous with this website because there was no chance whatsoever that you were going to be able to put any of those questions to Her Majesty. She's even better protected than you are, and there was no way whatsoever you could challenge her.
Well, if that's the case, then it's still good, surely, that people can get these things off their chest. There's millions of people in the long-suffering, silent majority out there very angry about what the politicians have done to our country, and I think it's better they get the chance to put it into a blog, to go on a website and talk about it, than sitting there feeling frustrated and angry.
Well, Sky's Rhiannon Mills is outside Buckingham Palace for us this afternoon. Hello to you, Rhiannon. So, how do the people feel who are going to the palace? Glad or not that Nick Griffin won't be with them and enjoying tea?
Well, Kay, when we found out back in June that Nick Griffin had been invited to this garden party, it raised a few eyebrows then. But today, I think, really is causing more controversy than any of us could ever have imagined. Of course, it was after Buckingham Palace released that statement earlier. I'll just give you a few more details on that. They said that Nick Griffin will be denied entry to today's garden party due to the fact that he's overtly used his personal invitation for party political purposes. They also said that his invitation had increased security risk and the personal discomfort of other people who should be attending the party. Of course, they were talking about that blog which you referred to earlier, a very lengthy blog which Nick Griffin had put on his website. Just to recap on a couple of things that he put on there, he said, "Who would have believed it 10 or even 3 years ago? Remember, the establishment thought us no more than an annoying fringe party. One thing's for sure, they're not laughing now." He also asked other members of the BNP for suggestions of what he should say to the Queen, saying that he didn't intend to take up residence in the Tower. Obviously, that upset Buckingham Palace. Did it upset other guests? To be honest, most of them were more fussed about what their hats were looking like today, but they did give me a mixture of opinions.
I think maybe he should have been allowed to come, to be frank about it. You know, yes, I think he should have been allowed to come.
That's not fair, really, is it? It's like taking ours away from us.
Yeah, he's just entitled, just like the rest of us, to go, isn't he? If he's been invited, then it gets taken away. No, I don't think he should have.
I think that's a shame. He should have been allowed to come. Of course he should.
Yeah, I mean, he's a person like everyone else. You don't have to believe his opinions.
Now, as an MEP, Nick Griffin was always going to be given this invitation to Buckingham Palace. It's open to all MEPs. They get 2 tickets to a garden party. Actually, last year he had turned down an invitation, and he had always said that he didn't want to cause any embarrassment to the Queen. He didn't want to draw too much attention. Unfortunately, that is exactly what he has done today, and now he's found himself, well, all dressed up with nowhere to go.
OK, Rhiannon, thank you very much. Other news to you now, Labour's accused the government of cancelling a major loan to Sheffield Forgemasters after lobbying from a Tory donor who heads another steel company. Downing Street is...
Live from the Sky News Centre, this is Live at 5 with Andrew Wilson.
Very good evening to you. Our top story live at 5. The parents of a woman missing for nearly a week have issued an emotional appeal, saying they fear that she's been abducted. Joanna Yates disappeared after going out for Christmas drinks near her home in Bristol last Friday. So let's go live to Joanna's home in Bristol now and speak to Sky's Rhiannon Mills. Rhiannon.
Well, this is even more heartbreaking and distressing, being at a time of year when so many of us are getting ready to spend time with our relatives. Instead, the parents of Jo Yates have found themselves caught up in this mystery of what exactly has happened to their daughter. Both of them, her boyfriend Greg and her friends, have been doing all that they can this week to try and find her, to try and raise awareness that she's gone missing. There are posters on every lamppost along this street. There's a website that's been set up. For all of them, though, Christmas really is on hold until they find Jo.
I just can't bear the thought of it.
Maybe she's out there somewhere by herself in the snow, frozen. It breaks me up.
They should have been preparing for their daughter to come home for Christmas. Instead, David and Teresa Yates were again appealing for help to find their Joanna. They fear that she's been kidnapped.
I just want her back, wherever she is. Jo, my little Jo, come back. And if anybody's got her, don't keep her. Give her back to us. We miss her so much.
My personal feelings, I think she was abducted from a flat after getting home from a flat. We've got no idea of the circumstances of the abduction, but because of what was left behind in the flat, we feel that she wouldn't have gone out by herself.
Last Friday, Jo had met up with work colleagues at the Ram pub in Bristol at 6 o'clock. She left at 8 o'clock and was caught on CCTV at 8:10 at a nearby Waitrose. At 8:40, she left a nearby branch of Tesco Express in Clifton, and police know that she returned home to Canage Road because a Tesco receipt for a pizza, her bag and her keys were all found in her flat by her boyfriend Greg Rhiannon.
But what we have not found is any evidence of this pizza, or the box, or the wrappings. I want to make an appeal, firstly, a general appeal to anyone who knows what's happened to Joanna, or where she might be now, but in particular I want to appeal to anyone who knows where this pizza is now, or where the box is, or any information at all that might suggest where it is.
It was her boyfriend Greg who reported her missing after returning from a weekend in Sheffield on Sunday night.
Her and Greg were totally in love. They were devoted to each other. She had nothing to... She had all the space she wanted. She had no work worries. She had no money worries.
Forensic teams today searched their flat, nearby woodland and the Avon Gorge, looking for any clues as to where she may have gone.
The helicopter, and I totally agree, a visual search isn't just appropriate because there could be snow on top. So
despite Christmas approaching and the difficult conditions, police say their investigations will continue. Jo's Christmas presents are already packed under her parents' tree. All they want is their daughter back.
Please come home, Jo. Our hearts are breaking up with not having a little girl with us. Greg is going through hell. Please come home. Please contact us. Please let her go.
Just let her go if you've got her. Let her go and let her come back to me and her dad and her family.
Rhiannon, whichever way you look at it, this is a terrible mystery. What lines of inquiry are there for the police?
Well, yeah, there's been a huge amount of police activity here on Canage Road where Jo lives. There's also been a lot of activity in other nearby areas, Clifton Village, Avon Gorge as well. The main thing, though, that police were keen to stress today is for help in tracing that pizza box. Now, it may seem like a rather unusual thing for them to appeal for during such a serious inquiry like this, but they believe that that is the only thing which is missing, which Jo had with her when she was heading back from that Tesco store. Everything else that she had with her, from her bag to her mobile phone to her purse, were all found inside her flat. Now, I did ask DCI Brennan earlier about the parents' suggestion that she may have been abducted. He didn't want to be drawn on it, but he certainly said that was one area of inquiry that they are looking into. He also was very keen to stress that Christmas may be coming up, but they certainly are going to carry on investigating until they can hopefully find Jo.
Indeed, Rhiannon, thanks very much indeed. Rhiannon Mills there live for us in Clifton. And anyone with information about Joanna's disappearance is being asked to call these numbers. The incident room on 0845 456 7000, 0845 456 7000. And you can also call Crime Stoppers. That's on 0800 555 111, 0800 555 111. The former Scottish Socialist Party leader Tommy Sheridan has been found guilty of perjury.
Update with all the business news. Back to you now, Anna.
Thanks very much indeed, Darshini. We'll see you a little bit later. Now, it's time to dig out your old clothes and dust down your vinyl records because Retro Chic is getting a festive airing. The UK's first vintage festival is being held this weekend at Goodwood House in West Sussex to celebrate 5 decades of British music and fashion. And Sky's Rhiannon Mills is there for us. Rhiannon, tell us all about it.
Well, certainly on your usual high street, you don't normally expect to see queues and hordes of people heading in to your local charity shop. But here at Vintage Goodwood, well, that's what it's all about. It's about those traditional vintage clothes. Lisa, you run the shop here. How busy has it been, and what things are people desperate to get hold of?
It's been so busy. We took £1,000 in the first half an hour. The most popular thing's got to be 50s dresses, the beautiful 50s dresses.
And a bit of fur and that kind of
stuff.
Bit
of fake fur, lovely tweed, Harris tweed, Aran jumpers, yeah, for the cold evening.
Well, yeah, I think we might, thanks for that, Lisa, I think we might need a few more things than jumpers. It is raining, but really wellies and waterproofs won't cut it, because today is all about the best of British culture, the best of British design, and it's about really widening the festival experience. Now, the man behind it was Wayne Hemingway, designer. You are here in the middle of your own high street. Yeah. How does it feel?
Well, first bit of rain, but never mind, it's only a passing shower, yeah.
How does it all feel that it's all come together like this?
Well, it's kind of, I'm slightly exhausted because we've been working on it for so long, but it's just one of those goose pimple moments when we cut the ribbon this morning, myself, Geraldine and Lord March, and there was all those thousands of people, and they came in and they were just gobsmacked. I mean, we've been living this for a year, and we know how good it is. This, particularly this high street, is amazing, and how architecturally significant and clever, and just put a smile on people's faces. But when they were all there smiling and going in the shops and just laughing and taking pictures, and then within minutes the clubs all filled up, they were all dancing to Northern Soul, and then they were in the 60s area, and then the torch tent, the 40s area, people just sitting down to have dinner, all dressed up, you know, at midday, and it's just brilliant. And then all dancing to a dance band. Amazing.
I've just seen so many people dressed up. I'll let you go and enjoy yourself anyway, but it's been a great day.
Yeah,
really,
and it's on tomorrow and Sunday, and you can still,
the whole weekend.
And you can still pay on the door.
Well, it is about British culture, really. It's encompassing all kinds of different things, but music is still very much at the heart of it as well. Tonight they've got performing The Faces and Sandy Shaw, some old names that people haven't seen for a long time. There's also kind of, I think maybe the umbrellas are in the way, but there's lots of big dance tents dotted around so that people can experience all kinds of different music. And to be honest, I did see some really classic dance moves going on in the Soul tent earlier, so I think I'm going to go and watch a few more of those now.
Oh, go and join in, Rhiannon. You know you want to.
Oh, I will.
Thanks very much. We'll see you a little bit later. Now, coming up next here on Afternoon Live, find out why the domino effect has sent China into the record books. That's coming up.
Make your summer a winning one and enjoy traffic-free cycling with Skyride. Register free at goskyride.com.
Once upon a time, £20 only got you broadband.
5 companies have been fined almost £10 million between them for their part in the Buncefield oil depot explosion. Well, let's go to the scene of that blast now. Sky's Rhiannon Mills has the full story. Rhiannon.
Well, today saw the end of the criminal proceedings into what was one of the biggest industrial accidents ever seen in Britain. It happened, of course, here at the Buncefield oil depot, now a shadow of its former self. Some fuel does still flow through here, but it is nothing compared to the amount of petrol and aviation fuel that was stored here on the day of the 11th of December 2005. Now, on that morning, one of these storage containers, similar to the white ones that you can see behind me now, was leaking petrol. The safety gauges had failed, no alarm warnings sounded, and it was that leak of petrol which caused that enormous explosion. It measured 2.4 on the Richter scale, and it was heard and seen for miles. Today, though, it was 5 companies who felt the full force of what they had done.
You really must move away now!
It's no surprise the people of Hemel Hempstead will never forget this. It was the biggest explosion ever seen in peacetime Europe, described by one man as like the end of the world. Now 5 companies have been ordered to pay fines and costs of almost £10 million for failing to make the Buncefield oil depot safe, putting people at risk and polluting the environment.
Incidents like the explosion at Buncefield are exceptionally rare, but they should not happen at all. Because when things go wrong in this sector, then the consequences are severe and can destroy lives, shatter local communities and cause damage to the environment that can last for generations. So the industry should be in no doubt. We'll always seek to prosecute those who put lives at risk and cause serious pollution. And lessons must be learnt from this incident.
2,000 families were evacuated after the explosion. 170 are still fighting for compensation.
At first blush, those are pretty big numbers, but what you have got to do is compare those figures with the fact that Total, in the first 3 months of this year, had profits of £2 billion. Now, these guys burn billions of petrodollars before you and I have breakfast. It's loose change. It's a disappointingly small fine. We were hoping for a record.
Incredibly, no one died, but 43 people were injured. It was heard as far away as France and Belgium. But David Mitchell was much closer. His son's bedroom overlooks the depot.
The ceilings are collapsed and, bits of the roof are falling down.
Today, he told us his thoughts on the verdicts.
I thought it'd be something like 10 times that figure. Something that would hurt them, obviously not destroy the company, but something that they'd actually feel. And I think they've probably gone away thinking we've got away with that. And I'm very disappointed.
But Total, who face fines and costs of £6.2 million, have now been given permission to rebuild a new depot. Experts say we may never know the true impact that the Buncefield explosion had on businesses, families and the environment. No one lost their lives that morning, but many certainly did lose their livelihoods. Well, it may be nearly 5 years since it happened, but from being here over the last couple of days, from seeing areas which are still closed off, areas which still look like a bomb site in many cases, talking to businesses and talking to families, you really get the impression this is still a community which is trying to get back on its feet. I've been past a warehouse which was damaged during the explosion. That's only just being rebuilt. Underneath us here, there is still pollution in the water table. You've also got all those families who are still fighting for compensation. And they have said that today's fines really are a drop in the ocean compared to the damage and the hurt that this explosion had caused. They were always told an explosion like this couldn't happen, it wouldn't happen, it did happen. And now with Total getting permission to rebuild on their site, they're hoping it won't happen again.
Thanks very much indeed, Rhiannon. Well, Apple is holding a news conference right now to announce what it's going to do about the problems with its new iPhone. Martin Stamford.
That full-time staff have, and in particular that's in major incidents and terror. But as you heard, there's some breaking news. There's going to be a meeting now on Tuesday morning to try and avert that strike action on Bonfire Night.
OK, Amy Lewis, thank you. Just to reiterate, an 8-hour strike in London starting tomorrow, a 48-hour strike planned from the 5th of November. We'll stay with that story, bring you more if there is any more this evening. Well, let's return now to our top story. And more details are emerging about exactly who is behind the parcel bomb plot, possibly intended to bring down 2 aircraft. Well, Sky's Rhiannon Mills is at the news wall.
Well, intelligence officials now believe that this is the man who made the bombs. He's 28-year-old Ibrahim Hassan al-Assiri, a man who's been described as one of al-Qaeda's most fanatic followers. He was born in Saudi Arabia and is one of the kingdom's hit list of most wanted terrorists. He's now a high-profile member of al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, which is actually based in the Yemen. Security chiefs believe that he is the group's bomb-making expert who's built the devices for a number of big attacks. He was actually held responsible for designing the underwear bomb that was used by a Nigerian man to try to blow up a plane over Detroit last Christmas. Today, an investigation has also been launched to check whether his devices were involved in the explosion of a UPS cargo jet in Dubai in September. Last year, he also built his younger brother a suicide device that was used in the attempted assassination of a Saudi politician. Now, al-Assiri has contacts at the very highest levels. It's understood that he's regularly in contact with Anwar al-Awlaki, another senior al-Qaeda leader, and linked to this week's plot.
Well, live now to our Central London studio bomb disposal specialist, Chris Hunter. Thank you for joining us this evening, Chris. There is talk then of this being the work of the same bomber. Do you think that's likely from what you've heard?
I think it's highly possible. I mean, al-Asiri is notorious. Indeed, he is suspected of constructing both a device that was used against the Saudi Minister of the Interior and also the Christmas Day bomb at Detroit Airport. Crucially, those particular devices relied heavily on camouflage. The device that was used against the Saudi minister was believed to be actually secreted in the body. The device that was used in Detroit was secreted on the body, using similar sort of principles to those used by drug smugglers, actually. And indeed, they both had PETN, powdered plastic explosive, very similar to the explosive, or indeed exactly the same explosive, allegedly in the toner cartridges that we discovered in yesterday's plot.
There's always this term, isn't there, the hallmarks of the same bomber. It's a bit of a cliche, but are there specific devices in the way they're built? Can they be traced back to a certain type of builder or even an individual?
Absolutely, yes, they can. I was personally responsible with my colleagues for identifying bomb makers who had a specific signature, as we call it. And that can be a number of means. It could be the way they physically construct a bomb, through to the type of wiring they use, right the way through to the forensics and the DNA that they leave on their devices.
Lots of talk now about changes in security. Does the way a bomb is made help, or the knowledge of that help in terms of upping security and detecting future devices?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, certainly if a particular type of explosive is used, for example, measures can be put in place to detect that type of explosive. And certainly the explosive detectors we have around airports around the world at the moment are very, very good at detecting virtually all known types of explosives that terrorists can potentially get their hands on. But there are also several other means of detection of both the components in devices and indeed the actual explosive parts as well.
Now, without giving credibility to the terrorists, police in Dubai said that this device was quite sophisticated, quite professionally made. To your eyes, from the stills you've seen, do you think that's true?
Yeah, I mean, I think, whilst we don't want to sort of credit these individuals, and bearing in mind they are terrorists, they are killers, they target civilians, we have to accept the fact and respect their knowledge. They are very, very good at what they do. They have a very extensive knowledge base, and they're extremely cunning. They will try and exploit any loophole we have in our security and try and target that specific Achilles heel. And certainly that's what we've seen again and again with these devices that they've sort of secreted on the body, or indeed secreted in everyday items, that they sort of, anything at all that could be smuggled through as an innocuous everyday item, they'll try and exploit it and secrete a device in there.
OK, Chris Hunter, we appreciate your expertise this evening. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, don't forget to let us know what you think about any of the stories we're covering today. You can email us, news@sky.com, or text us, 84501. We're also on Twitter. Sky News Weekend is where to follow us. Well, hundreds of victims of abuse and their supporters have been prevented from marching on the Vatican to condemn the Catholic Church's handling of priest sex abuse scandals. People from 13 countries, including Britain,
an inquiry into this breach of royal security.
The next steps in relation to the incidents that have taken place today, and remember we have police officers who've been injured, we have damage to buildings, and there was an incident involving their Royal Highnesses. The Metropolitan Police will obviously be looking into all of these, but I repeat, what we have seen on the streets of London today, the appalling levels of violence that we have seen, this has nothing to do with peaceful protest. Attacks on police officers and property show that some of the protesters had no respect for Londoners, for London or for its citizens. And I think the police have done a tough job today in exceptionally difficult circumstances. We thank them for their professionalism because they've put themselves on the line to keep London's streets and citizens safe. Peaceful protest is acceptable. Violent protest and criminal damage are not acceptable.
But in terms of the royal family, surely you must think there should be an inquiry. You say Paul Stevenson will be looking into this, but surely as Home Secretary you must think there will be an inquiry.
I have made my position clear in relation to the protests that we have seen in London today. What we have seen in London today is a degree of violence on our streets which has nothing whatsoever to do with peaceful protest. The government believes people should have the right for peaceful protest, but what we've seen today is something quite different. Police have had a very tough job to do today in exceptionally difficult circumstances. We thank them for their professionalism. The sort of attacks we've seen today are nothing to do with peaceful protest. Peaceful protest is acceptable, but violent protest and criminal damage are not acceptable.
Okay.
the Home Secretary just a short time ago. Let's go live to Scotland Yard. Rhiannon Mills is there for us. It's clear from the Home Secretary there that she is pretty angry about what has happened today. And that anger, frustration, seems to have been reflected by the Metropolitan Police Commissioner as well, Rhiannon.
Absolutely. Throughout the afternoon, the Met Police here have been very happy to talk to us, but you get the sense that they have become increasingly angry, increasingly frustrated. The Commissioner came out and spoke to us a little over an hour ago and said that full investigation will take place. He has condemned tonight the violence that we have seen on the streets of London. He says that his officers came out this morning to facilitate what was meant to be a peaceful demonstration, but as the hours wore on and a number of people began to deviate from the allocated route which they had set in place for this demonstration, it became clear to them that there were a number of elements within that demonstration that didn't want to talk about tuition fees. They were here to cause trouble. Now, just to give you some of the numbers, it's led to around 22 arrests today. We're still getting those numbers through, but for various things from arson, assault on police, burglary. There's also been a number of injuries, around 38 protesters injured, around 10 police officers injured. We have seen some horrific images today of those scuffles, of that violence which has broken out today and led to those huge number of injuries. One of the elements that they were using, though, to try and bring things under control, again, was that containment, that kettling. They were trying to contain demonstrators within Parliament Square. Earlier, I put to one of the senior officers here at the Met Police that maybe that containment hadn't worked because we'd seen these sporadic elements of violence break out in other parts of London. However, they said that it was necessary to put that containment in place. And also, when I asked the Commissioner himself, had this not exacerbated problems, had this not caused more violence, he said, no, this is actually an excuse for people to cause trouble. Now, some people would say that it was always going to be a very difficult job to keep this many people to a certain allocated route, but I think tonight many people will be surprised at the spread, the scale of the damage that we've seen, and this is very much an operation which is still ongoing tonight.
OK, Rhiannon, thank you. Well, in the studio with me now is Graham Wetton, a former Public Order Intelligence Officer for the Metropolitan Police, and you've been monitoring this situation all day, Graham. What is your assessment tonight as we've seen this protest begin, descend?
The state visit to the Gulf. Police have repudiated criticism of their containment tactics during the student protests yesterday in London. The Met said it was necessary to control the crowd after some demonstrators became violent towards police and property in the administrative heart of the capital. Rhiannon Mills reports.
There was no lie-in for the council workers tasked with clearing up the mess of the night before. Smashed glass and graffiti littered parts of Whitehall, a day after students had battled with police inside the cordon. The containment or kettling of thousands of students was a last resort, say the Met Police. But last night, as protesters were slowly dispersed, there was anger amid accusations that police had trapped innocent teenagers and made a bad situation worse.
They treated us like animals. They kept us in there for 9 hours.
There was about 1% of the people in there were being violent, just a small minority of the people, and everyone's been punished for it.
Police reaction in general today was completely over the top, and it really created the situation that occurred in there.
After the violence of 2 weeks ago, the Met came prepared and in numbers. And it wasn't long before violence flared, with clashes just yards from Downing Street. As the hours passed, it became clear that police were playing the long game. Portable toilets and bottled water were brought in. Eventually, one by one, students were allowed out.
It's a valid tactic, and the time today was we had a large number of people in Whitehall causing violence, causing disorder and criminal damage. And in order to prevent that spilling out across London, preventing breach of the peace and ensuring the safety of other members of the public, a containment was put in.
But critics say the majority were punished for the actions of a small, violent minority. Once again, these protests have left their mark. They've again raised questions about how these kind of demonstrations are policed. But even the students realise that images like this are going to do little to further their cause.
Well, let's talk to Rhiannon. She joins us live from Whitehall now. Good morning to you, Rhiannon. Back to normal?
Good morning. Yeah, it is pretty much back to normal. We've got commuters heading past us, but if you come with me, you can soon see the destruction that's been left behind by the students. That was where those fires were started yesterday. And if we move over here, behind the people, you can also see this telephone box has been completely smashed to pieces. You've got graffiti, glass everywhere. And just up here, one of those windows which the demonstrators were trying to get into as well. This is a big clean-up job. There's also going to be lots of questions that the police are going to be asking themselves today in terms of how they contained the demonstrations yesterday. We're also expecting to hear from some students from University College London later on this morning. No doubt they'll probably be looking at a change of tack as well, because once again this morning we're not talking about their campaign to stop those rises in fees. We're talking about the mess that they've left behind.
Rhiannon, thanks very much indeed. People suspected of domestic violence could be banned from their homes for up to 4 weeks, even if there isn't enough evidence to charge.
We've had hundreds of extra people drafted in last night, specialists just on the runway alone, as well as the thousands of people that have been handing out water, coffee and tea, food, blankets around the airport to people. There's mattresses that have come in, as well as the blankets you've been seeing on the pictures you've got. And we've also switched on Wi-Fi to enable people to check their airlines' websites and to contact relatives. And we're hoping that more people are going to be able to get away today, but we do need to stress that there are severe disruptions.
Well, let's talk about it a bit further, the situation here at Heathrow. Rhiannon Mills is with me. She's been around the terminals this morning, and it doesn't look good and people are desperate, but is there a sense of calm over there or not?
Not really, I'm afraid. This time of year, obviously, I'm normally incredibly jealous of people who are heading away to some warm weather. Today, I certainly don't envy anyone who's having to head over towards those terminals. I jumped on one of these hopper buses here, packed full of people, hoping that they would be able to get their flights today. But a lot of them, when I turned up at Terminal 3, you arrived at the departure doors, and before you could even get into departures, they were checking your passports, your tickets, saying you were only allowed in to that area, you were only allowed indoors if your flight was definitely going to take off.
The thing is, Rhiannon, the airport operator has been saying for days, do not come to the airport unless you know your flight is going, as that Malaysian Airlines is. Are people turning up anyway, just on the hope? I mean, is that causing more trouble?
I think the problem is people say they've been trying to ring the phone lines, they've been trying to check online, but they're not getting the information that they need. When I was heading back on the bus, I actually spoke to a gentleman who was meant to be flying off to Hong Kong on Saturday. He'd managed to sneak into the terminal, to departures, to some of those check-in desks and say, look, when can you get me onto a flight? But he'd actually had to try and sneak into the building to try and get that information. He's a gold card holder, he should be getting information, and he wasn't getting it. And there are so many stories over there, just heartfelt stories. A woman who was meant to be going to Dubai on Saturday, she was out there outside of departures with 2 young toddlers and a baby who looked to be under 6 months old, and you just want to help them out.
I mean, why are they staying at the airports and not going to hotels in the local area, finding friends, just phoning anyone, that they don't have to stay in the terminals?
Well, that family that I've just spoken to, they had to head home. On Saturday, they were told, right, your flight's cancelled. They were heading home. But they've obviously turned up today. They were told that another flight had been laid on specially today, not just for them, but a number of other passengers to make sure that they could get away. But they were unable to find out exact information about that flight online. So they're having to turn up to get that information. There are a number of staff around there, lots more high-vis jackets around, people trying to get information out there. I think it's unfair to say that the airports and the airlines aren't trying, but it's so incredibly frustrating for people who just really want to get away for Christmas.
And listen, it's snowing again now. It's quite light at the moment, but should it get any heavier, how much does it take before Heathrow closes again?
It's really, really difficult. Over the last few weeks, I've, I suppose, been lucky enough to go airside at a number of airports. Stansted. I was actually at Heathrow a few days ago when we didn't have this snow, out airside, talking to people about what their snow teams do. They work around the clock. They work 24/7. That is probably no consolation consolation to people who are being told that their flights are cancelled or delayed. But if you think it's tough de-icing your car first thing in the morning, these guys are really facing a struggle. The areas where all the planes are parked, they all have to be de-iced. Any snow like this, which is coming down, that's going to have to be cleared later on. And of course there's also the runway, and they have to de-ice all the planes as well. Every moving part on that plane has to be de-iced. That costs a great deal of money, and it just takes time.
Rhiannon, thanks very much. You'll keep abreast of it here at Heathrow. As you can see, there are the occasional plane taking off. I can see an American Airlines one. People in the hotels around here looking at those and just thinking, gosh, how lucky are those people? They are going to get home or get away. Let's go around the country a bit for you now, find out what the situation is like. Sky's David Crabtree is in Evesham in Worcestershire. David, what are the major concerns of people there?
Hours this morning, and the temperature hasn't risen much above that at all throughout the whole day. The problem is it means that the roads aren't getting any better, and as you can see, it's just started to snow again. A few people have been telling us about how their water pipes have frozen up, so there's severe problems there as well, and just getting around and about. But people have been quite stoic. They have been coming down into Evesham to do that last minute Christmas shopping, and ironically, a few traders here have said that because of that, more people are staying local, haven't gone to the areas like Cheltenham or Birmingham that they normally go to. So in fact, they've been doing quite a booming trade here this morning. As you can see, the roads are still very bad indeed here. The gritters have been out. The local authorities say the problem is when it has been -10, is rock salt doesn't really have much. It doesn't really do much for the road.
The world's a stage there. Now, if you buy yourself a gadget, you might want the latest model, mightn't you? But that hasn't stopped someone paying £110,000 for a 34-year-old computer with no keyboard and no monitor. Sky's Rhiannon Mills explains what's so special about it.
You can forget using it for email, and taking photos is definitely out of the question. This is the great-great-granddad of your gadgets. The Apple One is fairly fragile in its old age, but it's worth a lot more than its relatives.
This is really significant. This is where your technology today all starts from here. Without the Apple One, you wouldn't have had the Mac, you wouldn't have had the iPod, the iPhone, the iPad, and even Microsoft Windows computers you would not have had without the Apple One.
Of course, these days we're all used to using our computers at just the touch of a button. But back in the 1970s, it was all a little more do-it-yourself. You see, back then you didn't get things like a monitor or a keyboard. Instead, you got a box of bits like this. And this is what made up your Apple PC. The most important part was this motherboard in here, and it was a first for computers. Today, we take it for granted in technology like this. Apple CEO Steve Jobs actually sold this one from his parents' garage. A letter from him and not the latest technology were enough to attract in the bidders.
Selling for £110,000.
Inventor Steve Wozniak was in the room to watch his baby sell for a lot more than the original $666.66.
I knew it was a great step at the time. I knew that it was it was possible, a part of this revolution, that people could have, every single person could have a computer in their home someday. We believed in that, but we didn't really know what it meant. We didn't think you'd ever have a song on a computer. You know, even though if you used your brain, you'd have to predict, yeah, my gosh, you're gonna have a movie on a little card someday in your hand. It was very hard to see at the start.
Wozniak and Steve Jobs never expected to become cult icons. Today, their designs, old and new, continue to swallow up the computer market. But with only 50 of these in collections around the world, you might want to set your sights on a more practical gadget this Christmas. Rhiannon Mills, Sky News.
Well, in sport in a moment, the countdown to the Ashes continues.
To reassure people, the rather apocalyptic language that comes so quickly to Ken Clarke's lips is very different to the sorts of thing that many of his government colleagues would choose to say.
OK, Joey, for the moment, thanks very much. Well, staying in Downing Street, the Governator met the Prime Minister there today, and both were united in praising Britain's armed forces. Arnold Schwarzenegger joined David Cameron to then meet soldiers from the 1st Battalion, the Grenadier Guards, who lost 5 men on their last tour of Afghanistan. Sky's Rhiannon Mills reports.
It's not every day that you get to have lunch with real action men. For Governor Schwarzenegger visiting Wellington Barracks, this was his chance. Invited by David Cameron to speak to the troops, he admitted that he likes to hang out with heroes.
I get hailed a lot of times when I travel around the world as being the action hero. But I know the difference between a movie action hero, where it's make-believe, and the true action heroes. You all are the true action heroes.
Earlier in the day, the governor started his trip by dropping into Downing Street. The Prime Minister and Arnold Schwarzenegger have been firm friends for a while now, so it's only right that he gets a trip to David Cameron's new home, here to talk about the economy, Afghanistan, and probably not his film work. It seems the PM is a fan. We left the puns to him.
He's going to help me terminate the budget deficit.
Away from worries about the deficit in California, the governor surprised tourists by watching the changing of the guard. And away from the cameras, he couldn't resist a trip to the army gym.
With those deltoids and those biceps and the six-pack and all of those kind of things. Wow, you guys are really in great shape.
This visit wasn't about flexing political muscles, instead celebrating the bond between Britain and America. A close relationship it may be, but with Schwarzenegger's spell in office soon coming to an end, who knows whether he'll be back. Rhiannon Mills, Sky News.
As the fog hangs warily over London, we can offer something to cheer you up.